Welcome to WorksheetCloud Grade 9 English. I hope that you guys have had a lovely day thus far and that you are excited and ready to go for our language lesson today. If at all during the lesson you feel you need a bit more clarity or you're not sure about something, please do contact grade 9 at WorksheetCloud.com. Any queries, concerns, or like I said, information that you require will then be sent back to you if necessary. All right, so let's get going with the lesson today. I like to start with a little motivation. I'm sure those of you who've been following will know. And something that I thought is really important as you're sort of going through your teenage years is to start thinking, who are you? Now, I don't just mean who are you as in I'm Mrs. Nautia, that's my name. I mean more of how do you think people perceive you? I don't want you to see this as you need to put up an appearance for people. I'm asking you how you think you put yourself out there. So I know that maybe sometimes the way I think people perceive me is not actually that way, because I sometimes put on a different personality when I'm around different people. And what I've realized, and luckily I have age in my favor, so that's why I've realized, is that you have to be your true, authentic self all the time. Because people will start realizing if you're trying too hard to adapt and you're trying too hard to please. And that's why I think you need to think of the second question. What are your values? Do your values align with your actions? So if you say that a very important value to you is integrity and respect, are you showcasing that to people? So just give it some thought, not now, because we're going to be doing phrases and clauses, but really think about who you are, what you want to give out as an impression, and does that actually align with the values that you've set for yourself and maybe learned from your family? Okay, so motivation for today. As I've said now, we are going to be doing phrases and clauses. You will need pen and paper. However, if you feel you'd rather watch, the activity is going to be a video interactive one. If you'd rather watch and simply think about your answer, that's fine. But I know a lot of learners also like to make notes and jot down their answers, so whichever works best for you. Okay, so phrases and clauses, you would definitely have heard about it in class. I'm now talking from, let's say, grade 5, 6 onwards. And it really can be very technical. I know a lot of learners are afraid of phrases and clauses because it can be difficult. But if you know the basics, it will make it a lot easier for you just to simply identify what is a phrase, what is a clause, how do I work with it. So I'm going to start off here by showing you a little bit of how we'll go through this today. So we will look at phrases first. Now, phrases are defined very simply as a group of words, no finite verb, it cannot stand alone. Then we'll look at clauses. Clauses are the opposite. A full sentence, a finite verb, it can stand alone. Then we'll look at types of clauses, just main and subordinates. I'm not going to go into adverbial, adjectival. It's actually not really something that you'll be working with. You only need to know phrases, clauses, how does it divide into main and subordinates. And then throughout, we'll obviously do some activities so that you can test your understanding. Okay, so that's a breakdown of how we'll go through today. So as I said, a phrase is simply a group of words. It is not a full sentence. It cannot make sense on its own. If we all had to walk around blurting out phrases to each other, no one would know what was happening. Because a phrase doesn't have a finite verb, which means it does not have subject, number, or tense. A phrase cannot stand alone. Like I said now, it doesn't make sense alone because it's not a full sentence. We're going to watch a short video on what exactly is a phrase. You'll see that the concepts I've said now are reiterated, and then just some examples for you to work with.
Hi everybody. Today I'm going to answer the question, what is a phrase? A phrase is a piece of information in a sentence made up of more than one word. A phrase is not a complete sentence, it does not share a complete thought, and it does not have a subject and verb. Like this example, the book was sitting on the table. This group of words has a subject, which is book, and a verb, which is sitting. We call this a sentence or an independent clause because it can stand alone and because it has a subject and a verb. Because this group of words has a subject and a verb, it is not a phrase. It's not a phrase because it has a subject and a verb, it shares a complete thought, and it's a complete sentence.
I think that's a very important thing to remember, that a phrase, it's not just one word. It has to be a group of words for it now to become a phrase.
By themselves are not phrases because these are just individual words in the sentence. So let's look at that sentence again and see if we can find some phrases. On the table is a phrase.
Right, so there you can see that on the table, it cannot just be said alone. Also, it does not have a finite verb. Therefore, it is a phrase.
And was sitting are also phrases. Let's look at those phrases and see what information they give us. The words on the table clearly go together, and they tell us where the book is. The two words the book go together because they tell us the noun in the sentence. Now we know what is on the table.
All those would be phrases because we're not getting a subject, so therefore it is definitely not or doesn't have a finite verb, and it is just a short piece of information.
To review one more time, a phrase is a piece of information in a sentence made up.
Right, guys, so phrases, as you saw there, it's really not complicated because they're the easy ones to identify. Let's have a look at these three sentences. Now, these are or the three sentences are full sentences. All right, so from capital letter to full stop, all make complete sense. What I'm going to ask you to do is, once I've said pause, you are going to stop the video and you are going to work out which part of that sentence is simply a phrase, a group of words that can't stand alone, no finite verb, but they're definitely adding information to the sentence. Right, so I'd like you to press pause and then we'll go through the answers. Right, so I hope that you guys were able to identify the phrases. So in the first one, I read the book all day long. All day long is the phrase which gives us more information about when did I read the book. Right, so I read the book would be a clause, it can stand on its own. All day long is a simple phrase. At the hospital, he decided to volunteer. Right, so at the hospital is your phrase giving you place. No finite verb, just a group of words, but it gives you some information. Every week from now, Sheila will practice piano skills. So Sheila will practice piano skills. That is your main part of the sentence, your main clause. Every week from now, it's just a group of words, a phrase, but it gives us more information. So your best bet when looking for a phrase is actually to work out first what part of the sentence can stand alone, and then look at what's left over and see if that makes sense as a phrase. Okay, so a group of words. A clause now is obviously the opposite. So a clause can stand alone. It does have a finite verb. However, you can still break it up into main clause and subordinate clause. The main clause is the part of the sentence that can stand fully on its own. The subordinate clause, it needs the main clause to make sense, but it still contains a finite verb. A lot of learners are fine with, I'm going to go back and show you, they're fine with the main clause. But then what they struggle with is having a look here and going, but how come that's a phrase and not just a subordinate clause? Well, because there's no finite verb. So a phrase and a subordinate clause look the same in that they're the leftover words in a sentence, but phrase, no verb, finite verb, clause, subordinate clause, there is a finite verb. Right, you guys are going to watch a short video now where again we learn a little bit more about what that means. You get independent and dependent, which are the same as main and subordinate clauses.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining me to learn about clauses. Be sure to have your notes in front of you to fill in as you go along.
Alright, so the clause, as they've said here, it has to have a subject and a verb
team.
because that is
There are
then
two
what
kinds of
makes
clauses,
this an
independent and
clause
dependent.
or
They both
subordinate
have
clause.
subject and verb teams. The only difference is that an independent clause makes sense and is a complete thought all by itself.
See, so both have subject and verb,
to be a complete
but
thought.
dependent or subordinate simply then
Here's how it
relies
works.
on what the main clause is.
The cat is sleeping. This is an independent clause. It has a subject and verb team and makes sense by itself. If I add the word when at the beginning,
right, so the cat is sleeping makes
complete?
sense all on its own. But if I have to say when the cat is sleeping,
because it
now
needs more
I'm confused.
Information.
What are you
I want
talking
to know
about?
what
Now I need
happens
some more
when the
information.
cat is sleeping.
Yes, there's a finite verb, but I'm still
When the
lacking
cat is
exactly
sleeping,
what's going
the
on.
mice will play.
So you need
Now
to
it makes
add something
sense.
so that it makes sense.
Here's another one. I was watching
Okay,
TV.
so I was
Does
watching
this sound like a
TV.
complete thought?
That is
Does
a
it make
full
sense by
sentence.
itself?
It is the main clause. Watching or
Yes,
was
it does.
watching is your verb.
And it has a subject and verb team. Does this still sound complete when I add while in the front of it?
While I was
While
watching
I was
TV,
watching TV.
Still has a finite verb, but
No.
what are
Now
you
it's
trying
a
to
dependent
say?
clause
We
because
need
it
to give more
depends
clarity
on more
because now it is
information to
simply
be
a
complete.
subordinate clause.
While
My
I
mom was
watching
cooking
TV,
supper.
my
My
mom
was
cooking
cooking supper is your main clause.
Now that
While
makes
I was
sense.
watching TV is your subordinate clause.
Here's one more. I studied hard for my test. Does that sound complete?
Yes,
and make sense by
it's
itself?
complete. I studied hard for my
Yes,
test.
it does. And it has a subject and verb team. Now read it. Does it still sound complete? No, it doesn't any longer.
Okay, so because I studied hard for my test,
Because I studied
that's
hard for
my
my test
dependent clause, my
information.
subordinate. It
Because I
definitely
studied hard
has
for my test,
a
I
or a
earned an
finite
A.
verb, but I
Now
need
it's a
something
complete
more
thought.
for it to make sense.
The words that I added at the beginning of the clauses are called subordinating conjunctions, or subordinators. Here are some examples.
Right, all
I say
clauses, subordinating clauses, those that rely on main clauses, will start with a subordinate conjunction. Although, even though, because, so that's also what helps you to know it is a subordinate clause. Okay, now let's practice a bit of what you've learned. So this is simply an interactive quiz, so you'll watch. As I said, you can write the answer, or you can simply just think about what the answer would be, and then see if you're right. It gives you a little bit of time, and then the right answer pops up. Right, so you're looking at main clause.
Time to get
and subordinate
serious.
clause.
Time to get serious!
You're now going to say which each one is.
Complete the mission.
Alright, does that make complete sense on its own? No, so it is subordinates. Does it make sense on its own? Yes, independent clause. Here we have a subject and we have a verb, so it can't be just a phrase, but does it make sense on its own? No, so it is subordinate. There will be a lot of time left on the road. Alright, this is a full sentence, so it's an independent clause. Alright, so there you had a little bit of practice in looking at, is it a main clause or a subordinate clause? Now we're going to look a bit differently. You're going to be given a whole sentence that has a subordinate clause, and you need to work out which is which. So you need to underline the subordinate clause. In other words, think for yourself, what would you say?
Complete the mission.
Subordinate. Don't eat that food if you don't like it. Let's have a look. Don't eat that food is your main clause. If you don't like it is subordinates. right, so I hope that with that you have a little bit more clarity and even just revision on understanding that a phrase is a simple group of words, no finite verb, cannot stand alone. Clauses are groups of words or sentences which do have a finite verb. A main clause can stand alone. The subordinate clause, even though it has a finite verb, still needs the main clause for clarity. All right, so I think to end off, I'm tying back to what I told you to reflect on at the beginning. Know who you are, know what you want, know what you deserve, and don't settle for less. If you know what you are about, what your values are, you will then know who you will want to let into your life, and you also know exactly what you expect and deserve. Spend some time really thinking about what's important to you and how you wish to use what you have to give to the world. Thanks so much for watching. I'm going to be saying farewell now. So thanks for watching Grade 9s. This lesson was brought to you by WorksheetCloud. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of day and that you take good care of yourself.